Welcome back to Lessons in Attachment. Today I'm going to be sharing 3 ways anxious attachers tend to think about the future. You may well know already that you're someone who tends to worry a lot. You may well know that you're someone who tends to get quite in your mind and really struggles to live in the moment. That's really common for a lot of people, but especially for those with anxious attachment. But there are some certain patterns that I really see you falling into a lot of the time. And when you start to recognize the patterns, that's a really good way for being able to catch yourself and ultimately redirect your thoughts. By noticing these patterns, you're going to be more likely to be able to pause and say to yourself, actually, I'm doing that thing again. And I know that if I focus my attention elsewhere, I tend to feel better. I tend to have more success. It's just better for my overall well-being. So if you do see yourself falling into one or more of these patterns, this isn't about beating yourself up. It's not about giving yourself a hard time. It's actually about going a step closer to being able to change it. We really want to make sure that we're always giving ourselves a lot of compassion in these situations. I will say here, whilst I remember, that inside the Attachment Recovery Gym, there is a masterclass helping you to really understand negative thought patterns, core beliefs and assumptions, so that you can change that. So if that is something that you want to dive deeper into after you've watched this video, then that is certainly an option for you as well. So one of the first patterns that anxious attachers fall into, remember we're thinking about the future, is that you expect the worst. So you will have this kind of catastrophic thinking, imagining the worst case scenarios. And this can happen very quickly. You might find that you are triggered and suddenly you're worrying about the future. And not only that, it's like the worst case scenario. There doesn't actually always have to be a trigger. I should say that as well. Quite often, if you're just feeling uncertain about a situation or you wake up, you might find that you're someone who has this natural pattern to worry about the future. And again, inside the Attachment Recovery Gym, I do have some guidance in there about how to manage worry, because that's a really, really common theme. There's always something for you to worry about. And you might well find that then when this one worry is sorted, you're worrying about something else. And that can be so consuming. It can be so anxiety provoking. And again, as I often say on this podcast, it can just feel like it's out of your control. So if you are someone who's constantly worrying about the future and catastrophizing and imagining worst case scenarios, you're certainly not on your own. There's lots of ways that you can begin to change this way of thinking. Noticing it, of course, is always going to be the first step, that we need to be aware of it. Learning to tolerate uncertainty, that is going to be one of your best friends in this situation. We often expect the worst and start imagining these situations when we are experiencing some kind of uncertainty. So if we can begin to tolerate that feeling, that can be really, really powerful. You want to notice the kind of images you're having. You want to notice the kind of worries that you're having. And then we want to, again, be able to redirect our thoughts elsewhere. The next pattern is that you are predicting your future based on the past. So you are using your past as like a crystal ball. Whatever it is that you have commonly experienced in the past or experienced the most, you are imagining and expecting that that must mean that this is what the future will be like. That's going to really, really limit you. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be that way if we stay in this pattern, but if we can recognize, okay, so I'm actually thinking like this about my future because I am using the past to predict it, that can be enough for us to say, okay, no more. I'm not going to do that anymore. I have the power to change the direction of my life. I have the power to think about actually what is meaningful to me. What's important to me, and how am I going to move towards that? Rather than continuing down this same path, how am I going to start to create the kind of life that I actually really want to have? How am I going to have the kind of relationship that feels important to me, rather than basing it on the past? Typically, I will see this in people that have been single for many, many years, or for all of their years so far. They will believe, I'm not going to meet somebody because I haven't for so long, or I haven't in the past. Whereas actually, that isn't the predictor of you meeting someone. It can happen. Another common example is if you have been cheated on in the past, assuming that this new person is going to do the same. And again, we can see that there are patterns. We can see that I often attract people that will cheat, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can change the people that we attract. We can change the type of relationships that we are in. Just because that has been the past, it doesn't mean that we have no control over changing. We can be different in how we date. We can be different in how we show up in relationships. We can be different in how quickly we walk away. So you get to say that the past is not going to predict your future anymore. Another way that you will think about the future is that you will doubt your ability to cope. So you really downplay your ability to problem solve. In that moment where you think things are going to be worse than they are, when you pair that with you thinking that you can't cope, it leads to so much anxiety. In reality, if we were to sit down together and really look at times when you have coped really well, times when things went way better than you thought they would, times when you were able to problem solve, I bet we can create a whole list of things. You'd have to be kind to yourself. You'd really have to perhaps dig deep, but I am almost certain that we could. Your tendency to overestimate how bad things are going to be and underestimate your ability to cope limits you. It keeps you stuck. It stops you from taking risks. It stops you from just actually doing really simple things in your day to day, because you're going to be so concerned about the outcome. You're going to be so concerned about how bad something is going to be. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to see yourself cope in situations. You've got to see yourself take risks. Even if things don't go perfectly, even if things don't go to plan, we want you to be able to see, but I coped, but I got through it, but actually I made this decision in the moment. What we know about people that tend to worry and really underestimate your ability to cope is that in the moment, you will struggle to problem solve. And that's what we want to support you to do. We want to support you that in the moments where life isn't going as you want it to do, that you're able to pause and actually solve this problem. It's harder to do that when you're really, really anxious, because that logical part is offline. But perhaps just even through you listening to this, through us having this kind of conversation, who knows? The next time you're in that state of worry, the next time you're underestimating yourself, you might just see yourself go, this is exactly what Carly Ann was discussing in that podcast. You know, I'm in that moment right now where I'm not able to problem solve because I'm really catastrophizing. That can be really powerful. Let's not underestimate that. So they are 3 ways that anxious attachers think about the future. Just take a moment to reflect on how you tend to view the future. What are your automatic reactions? What do you need to change and work on so that you don't feel so anxious all the time, and that you can be a bit more in the present? You can come and follow me on Instagram, carly.ann_. I am regularly posting content over there to help you move from anxious towards secure. Please do like and subscribe, and if you go to the description, you can see all the details about the attachment recovery gym, and even see some free resources there that are going to help you.